Hey guys, today we're talking about the OCG card rules that were added a few months ago, but inevitably they're probably going to be coming to the TCG. So I did want to talk about them, give my thoughts. They're very important and they're kind of shaping the way, OCG plays, and it's affecting the game in a really large sense, and it's affecting a lot of different decks. So there were two major rules that came out. I think it was at the end of March when these were added to the OCG. The first one that was added, if you guys aren't as familiar with this, I'm going to go over the rules. So the OCG currently has it where at the start you don't draw an additional card if it's the first turn. You only get 5 cards at the start. Like the other person would get 6 because they'll be drawing, but you don't get your initial draw. So you just get that initial hand for the first turn. So this rule is very interesting. Kind of like the other rule, I'm still debating the pros and cons of it. Some decks are way too fast nowadays. I will agree with that. Some decks having 6 cards in them allows them to make crazy plays right away, and because they have access to that, they're very, very strong. Some decks win just because they have the first turn, and if they have 6 cards, they can make that happen. 6 Samurais, although they're not the strongest deck, can make their plays very quickly because they're consistent enough and will have 6 cards. So in theory behind some of those things, especially with cards like artifacts and all these other crazy decks that can do stuff with card combos, I think limiting it to 5 cards is a good idea overall. I think that as the game goes on, as we're going to see pendulums and other archetypes that are fast and swarming and just can bring out things so well, limiting the first hand is not a bad idea. Having the first hand is a big advantage in the game right now, because if you have like something like Solemn Warning, good game for your opponent. Just wait until they, do whatever they need to do and activate Solemn Warning. So I think that because we have powerful back row, because we have stuff like that, because we have decks that work so quickly, it's a good idea. It's going to hurt some decks that aren't as fast, that just require a lot of cards. I know that might be silly to think about, but there are decks out there that aren't super fast, but just require so many cards to make them work. So it's going to hurt those decks. I'm concerned about a deck. I know a lot of people hate these decks, but I'm just going to mention it anyway. A deck like Chain Burn, something that requires a bunch of cards to work and still might not be that strong, is going to get hurt a lot because they don't have as much cards at the start. So it's, interesting thing to think about. You have to think about the deck type. It's going to affect different decks differently. Some decks might want more cards in the deck, so they might not mind getting a lower hand at the start to kind of set things up from the deck. So it's going to play out in a lot of different ways. Overall, I think it's a good change for the game. But definitely let me know your thoughts about that. In playing it, it might seem a little more frustrating because you don't have as much to do at the start, which is sometimes the most fun. But I think giving both players more of a chance to play will overall make the game better. So the second change that came to the OCG, which was a lot more interesting and exciting. So basically in the OCG now, field cards don't destroy each other when they get activated or get put on the field. So both players can have a field card at once. So this has a lot of different applications. First off, it's not going to change, obviously it's not going to change a deck that doesn't use a field card versus a deck that does. That's going to completely be the same matchup. It's not going to make a difference. Real big thing about this is that with decks that use field cards, and a lot of them do nowadays, they try to implement field cards a lot, they're not going to be countering each other with their field cards, which is going to create a lot more interesting situations. We're going to get to see matchups that we never really get to see. We're going to get to see Necro Valley versus, Harpy's Hunting Ground, and all these field cards kind of playing against each other, which is really, really cool in my opinion. I think that change is going to make the game really fresh and is going to allow people to play field card decks more often. A lot of people don't want to play field card decks because all they have to do is run into another field card deck and all of a sudden their whole plan gets neutralized. So I think it's going to be a really good change for the game overall. I don't want to see field cards as something that's kind of like a crutch that you're relying on but doesn't really work out, and it can be really negative in the game right now when you have these field cards that are kind of playing against each other. There's also a few very interesting applications for this that I'm a bit worried about. One is that Closed Forest is going to become a lot more stronger. If you aren't as familiar with that card, it's just going to lock people out of field cards. So that will be a really interesting card, and it's going to be a lot stronger nowadays. On the other side, cards like Gear Town, cards like Spellbook Tower are not going to get their negative effects. So I'm very worried about that, especially as a player that really enjoys Ancient Gears. It really upsets me that they're going to kind of nerf Ancient Gears, which aren't exactly the best deck type overall anyway. So I'm concerned about that. Maybe they'll change the card text. Maybe, or I guess Gear Town players will just need to implement more cards to make that work. Obviously you can destroy Gear Town a lot on your own, so not the biggest thing, but I think Gear Town needs more to it than just its tributing effect to be strong, and its destroying effect is supposed to counter other field cards. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about that. I think overall, like I was saying, the idea behind being able to play your field card against other players that are also playing field cards is really cool. Overall, like if you think about the show and all that stuff, it doesn't really make sense to have two fields, but it's still really, really cool that you'll be able to do those matchups. And I'm thinking about all the different stuff you could do with that. And I really like the idea of just being able to play what you want to play. The field card mechanic kind of keeps you from being able to play your style. And because field cards aren't going to destroy each other, you're going to be able to rely on your field cards more often. People are going to have to MST them. You'll have more back row if they do that. So I think it's going to really come into play in a big way for those field card decks. And I could see Konami being more interested in making field cards because players won't be as scared to run them because they won't be running in the way of other field cards. So I'm really excited about that change overall. But again, I do have those other concerns, so we'll see what happens with that. So those are the two big changes that came to the OCG that I think we should really keep an eye on because as pendulums are getting released and as they're going to get announced here eventually, I'm definitely concerned that's going to be coming here soon. So keep an eye on that. If you guys have your own opinions on these rules, I definitely like to hear them. I know there's negatives and pros to each of them all over the place, and I can see that. Overall, I think both rules are better for the game overall because it's going to make just playing the game more fun for both players. I think more players are going to be interested in more field card decks, and more players are going to be as locked down in the first turn because of that other drawing rule. So overall, I'm excited, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear, what you guys are thinking. Do you think the game's going to get better or worse? Do you think these changes are going to improve the game overall? Let me know your thoughts. Also, if you do have a topic you want me to discuss for this kind of weekly show I'm doing, just let me know down below and I'll consider it. But I do have a lot of, ideas that I'm thinking about, so we'll see. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.